Many thanks for joining us on today's segment of Newspaper Review, coming to you live from the studios of IATV. My name is Folashade Ogurinde, and today I have with me in the studio a guest analyst who is a veteran journalist, Mr. Moka Pokuola. Good morning.
Good morning, Folashade.
And how was your Wednesday night? I hope the rain didn't affect you.
No, the rain was good. I mean, the weather is calm.
Okay, well, I got caught in the rain. All right, for the newspaper review segment this morning, we'll be taking a view at the Guardian newspaper, the Nigerian Tribune, and the Vanguard newspaper. So let's head straight to the Guardian newspaper. So the headline story says, Nigeria has receded, Emefiele declares, with the rider CBN government predicts tough times ahead, says government earns 35.2 billion naira stamp duties. Economists blame rising food price as inflation hits 11.37%. Other stories here: court nullifies appointment of new Kano emirs. Kingmakers mount legal challenge against Ganduje. Others. Top government officer resigns over chieftaincy dispute. The story is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. How about the stories here? Tribunal hears Atiku's application disqualifying Bakachua May 22nd. The story is on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. FEC okays $1 billion loan for hydropower plant, saves $21 billion on imports. The story is on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. Chartered accountant rescued from jumping into Lagos Lagoon. The story is on page 12 of the Guardian newspaper. Other stories here: Lassa fever kills 2, infects doctors in Kebbi. That story is on page 37 of the Guardian newspaper. Mr. Muka, I find it's quite interesting here because a newly appointed CBN governor, Emefiele, is saying that Nigeria has receded, and is also predicting, financial. What exactly is going on here?
Well, I think what I find interesting when I read the story is that the CBN governor came lamenting that he came to realize the situation we are in Nigeria after going to on a recent trip to an Asian country, not long ago. But I know that the ordinary Nigerians have been under very serious shock for very many years. They realized what the CBN governor is just realizing now, and that shows part of the inadequacies, of our planning and the vision of our leaders. So if it will take only our CBN governor, to travel just maybe some few months ago and return from that trip to realize that, so Nigeria is this bad, it means that he's probably been living in a different climate. He's not aware of the sufferings of the Nigerian masses. He's not aware of the poor economic situation of the country. But a good thing, he has realized that things are bad. And it is a key factor in now reshaping the future of the country. And I could also see from what he has said that, well, by projection, Nigeria will be moving to about 425 million people by 2050.
Exactly.
2050 is just by the corner. We might think, we are in 2019, maybe some 31 years more, but that's a very short period in the life of a nation. And unless something serious, is done this time, it was our failure in the past that we are suffering today. So, and if we are in this situation now and nothing is done, by 2050, it is going to be more precarious. And that is exactly what Emefiele, he has been nominated for the appointment. He has gone through Senate screening.
Exactly.
I believe that he will be reappointed. But his next 5 years, I think, should be focused, on creating more very solid, more enduring, economic structure.
And Mr. Moka, with regards to the economy, one would think that a country as large and as populous as Nigeria would have like a 1-year plan, a 5-year economic plan, a 10-year economic plan, because we should have predictions towards what the economy is saying now and what it would be like in the next 5 years. But what we've observed, according to reports in our newspapers, is that government officials majorly, state the Nigerian economy is bad, and this and that. But nobody actually says this is our plan for the next 5 years. Is that not a reflection of the Nigerian leaders?
No, we've always had on paper. Let me put it that way.
But nobody comes to state categorically that this is the plan, this is how we can move from this point to that point.
They do their projection. They tell you 5-year plan. Then sometimes we've been talking about 2020 since the 1990s.
And next year we'll have 2020.
Yes. And the 2020 that we were talking maybe some 20 years ago is here.
Is here, is just
so
at the
it's
back
not
door.
as if on paper we've not been having all this.
But implementation.
Yes, but we have always failed on implementation. Nigerian leaders are good at writing papers. And the intellectuals in Nigeria are good at writing papers. They invite them to a workshop, they will deliver fantastic papers, that any intellectual in any world will hail. But when it comes to implementation, the thing will just be there in the...
But that's the executive arm of government to implement, these policies.
So that it is not only in the executive arm that we have all these failings. We have it in different areas of the Nigerian, system. So I think apart from government, but government has to show leadership. Okay. All of us too, citizens, we also hold a duty of, having this reorientation of our people to see that we also, do things in a manner that can steady, the economic progress of Nigeria and then prepare for the future ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maku. Let's move straight to the Nigerian Tribune. The headline story here says, PDP Atiku planning to sabotage Buhari, FG alleges. Your allegations irresponsible. PDP says, only the guilty are afraid, Atiku replies. The story is on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune. All the stories making the headlines here, the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. NITU insists banks, state governments must not tamper with LG funds. That story is on page 11 of the Nigerian Tribune. EFCC quizzes NAS clerk. That story is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. APC leaders behind my travails, Okorocha alleges. That story is on page 2. My government spent over 45 billion naira on tertiary institutions, says Ajimobi. That story is on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune. Over 1.3 million candidates have accessed 2019 results. That statement was made by JAM, and you can find the story on page 36 of the Nigerian Tribune. All the stories I have here. Return to status quo, court rules on appointment of 4 new emirs in Kano. That story is on page 13. Air Force kills 12 bandits in Kaduna Forest. Rescues 15 victims. That story is on page 13 of the Nigerian Tribune. Just below a picture here, road ahead for Nigeria still rough, very tough. CBN governor says population to rise to 425 million by 2050, he says. The second rider says laments dwindling fortune in palm oil to strengthen the Anchor Bora programs. That story is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. Emefiele is saying here again that we're going to have a tough road ahead, but we've talked so much about that. Now let's move to the story. Return to status quo, court rules on appointment of 4 new emirs in Nigeria. And those who observe the Nigerian political sphere would realize that most times we have the legislative arm taking a bill, making a bill and turning it into a law, and the aggrieved party goes to the courts, and why do we really always have this back and forth between government officials and the executive arm of government? What exactly is going on?
Well, to me, it's part of the deepening of democracy. We are supposed to experience things like that, for our democracy to grow. That a law has been made does not mean it is perfect. People where they find that law challengeable still have the right under the law to go to court and challenge it, and that is exactly what we are seeing in the case of the Kano Emirates, the new creation of Kano
splitting the Kano Emirates from 1 to 5.
Kano Emirates. The situation there is that the people there have gone to court. The court has said, okay, hold it, let the prevailing situation before this bill was passed continue, and then we look into your grievances. That is exactly all that the court has said. I have read, some presentations that said it has been nullified. No, it's not possible for a court to listen to a case in a particular day and then just on that day make a declarative verdict. It has only, said that they should maintain the status quo, and then they will look into their grievances. And what, in a question of time, we will see where the situation in Kano will be. It is not an issue, since it is in court. It's not an issue that we can begin to talk about.
All right, thank you, Mr. Muka. All right, let's go to the Vanguard newspaper. Tough times ahead for Nigerian. CBN governor appears before Senate for screening, raises alarm over population growth, predicts that Nigeria will be over 425 million in 2050, third largest worldwide. Senate committee endorses his reappointment as CBN governor, and the story is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Mother stories here just above the masthead. Inflation rises as higher food prices push rate to 11.37%. You can find a story on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. Buhari vowed to keep Nigerians safe. Why this mayhem? That story is on page 31 of the Vanguard newspaper. Court stops implementation of Kano's new Emirates law. That story is on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. I have a story here. Atiku PDP plotting to overthrow Buhari's government. FG laments, accept your self-inflicted woes, says PDP. That story is on page 41 of the Vanguard newspaper. 2019 UTME, over 1.3 million candidates have accessed results, says JAM. That story is on page 4 of the Vanguard newspaper. I have a story here. June 12, activists, others laud Buhari to honor Abiola as president-elect. The story is on page 38 of the Vanguard newspaper. What's your thoughts on this? June 12 and, the Abiola president-elect?
We have talked about it a number of times. That is the position of today's government. June 12 is a watershed on the democratic history of Nigeria. It cannot be wished away, and I think all of us have come to that realization that it cannot be wished away. Whether you like it or not, people will still continue to talk about June 12 and say that has been the freest, the fairest,
election ever in Nigeria.
Ever in Nigeria. And the most unfortunate thing is that the person that Nigerians voted for at that time was not only denied the benefit of the confidence that the people reposed in him in the process of fighting to assert his mandate. He died. So many things happened. His wife also died in that process, and Nigerians cannot easily forget that in a hurry. Exactly. And it's a good thing that today, at least in our governance mechanism, Nigerians are also beginning to realize that June 12 is part of our democratic life. And if Buhari says, okay, May 29, we have been used to doing it this way, I'm going to do just a solemn swearing-in ceremony, and then on June 12 we will do the real ceremonial handover. And well, so be it. He has satisfied a lot of people who have been demanding for that, and I don't think that anybody has any issue, against honoring MKO
Abiola. All right.
I'm not sure.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Muka. Let's move straight to the Nation newspaper. Emefiele policies saboteurs will no longer be spared, with the rider road ahead rough and tough. That story is on the front page and continued on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. Just above the masthead, the story says acting CJN to judges posterity will judge us. The story is on page 9 of the Nation newspaper. Government PDP row over threat to democracy. That story is on page 39 of the Nation. Other stories here. Lawan battle for Senate president, not do or die. That story is on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. And over we've heard government officials, elders, statesmen, the elders saying election is not a do or die affair. But over time we've seen just the past election, it's more or less like a chant or a mantra. It's not a do or die affair. But on the D-Day we see people literally killing themselves because of the ballots.
Well, it's because of the way we run our electoral system. There is, even on the part of the electoral commission, on the part of government, on the part of security apparatus, that we have in the country, you do not see that neutrality, and so everybody becomes desperate, and they go into it with the spirit, inside of them. Of do or die, whereas they keep on assuring the country. Why should we have people killing over elections? Why should we have people hiring talks to seize ballot boxes? Why should we get to that stage that politicians will assassinate one another? This is because of this desperation that they have allowed in the system. And the one that Lawan said, of course, will not degenerate to that stage. I'm sorry. I find it funny the way people are celebrating. The campaign for the Senate presidency as if it's a general election. The people that are going to vote have their number. Only 109 people will vote in the Senate. And you find a reason, you now find that people go even on air, campaigning. They now have groups visiting the country all over as if we are running a general election. I think it is part of their desperation. We don't need that. But since Lawan is assuring it is good that he has that kind of mind, and I think by the time he gets to the chamber, they will sort it out there.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Marco. Unfortunately, we have to call it a wrap on today's episode of Newspaper Review, and I'm very sure you've enjoyed today's package. Well, over now to Ibadan Studios for the rest of the AM package. I am Folashade Ogrinde. Thank you for staying tuned with us. Goodbye.